This is an important moment that we move from within the museum institution and making decisions internally and deciding what is best for the visitors, moving beyond the walls of the institution, talking to people outside, hearing other voices, making sure that we democratize that voice, bringing multiple points of view into the institution so that we understand not just one, but complex variety of voices. First step is understanding that museums are not just about something, but they are for someone. It's not only about the scholarship and the creation of ideas, but it really is about making connections to people. People are coming in, sharing that, changing, are bringing new worldviews to light in terms of the visitors and who's coming through the door. So first step, pay attention to who's coming through, make sure that's at the center, the visitors at the center of the focus and the conversation. No, and sometimes that's confused. Democracy is used in a lot of different ways. But the idea is that, again, it's a shared view. We have a statement of our Constitution, we the people. So understanding who those people are and ensuring that the voice of the people is something that is reflected in what we do. Our museums are public institutions. They are for the public and a lot of times paid for by the public. So we have a public trust. That's very important to understand. I think what's happened in a lot of different countries, not just United States, is the idea that moving away from sort of the palace or governmental focused, where the government creates value for and decides what the value is for people and what they should care about. Museums came from sort of an idea of a palace, or what are the goods and wealth of the government in power at the time, and what are the ideals of that government. And now it's shifting to be this more democratic and understanding this grassroots, bottom-up approach to museums. So we're transitioning at this point to sort of understanding what do people want, what are the needs of the community, really listening to what the communities and people who are coming to the institution are looking for, versus deciding, and it just being a governmental sort of propaganda, if you will. And one of the things we've talked about in the workshop and the lecture is shifting the civic responsibility. It not being just about forwarding the government in power or the wealthy in power, and those are not the only decision makers, but really being for the people, for the community, and helping to again embed ourselves into the community and understanding what the needs are of those groups. We've investigated a number of different needs over the past couple of days. We talked about several different case studies that we brought to bear. One from bringing communities in to be able to share their stories, all the way to creating new economies, new opportunities. One, Project Row Houses in Texas is one where it's actually built in an underserved neighborhood of the 3rd Ward in Texas, bringing, again, revitalizing those neighborhoods, these depressed neighborhoods. And that's a question that people have asked. They become NGOs in some way, and some at an extreme end they have in fact become social environments. The other is social justice and practice. One of the things about a museum is it is a forum. It is a place where people can have an open dialogue and conversation around an idea. So a number of institutions have been bringing out and advocating for different groups or different people that are potentially in stress or strife, so that there's a new clarity and understanding. We have a prison museum in Philadelphia, the Eastern State Penitentiary, that has taken a stand and said mass incarceration is wrong, and we have to change that. And they've made a very bold statement. Their belief is museums are not neutral spaces and should not be neutral spaces. They should be places where you can take a stand. So different museums have different functions depending on what it may be, but it can go to those places of taking a stand. Well, as I mentioned, the museum shifted from being houses of information to an advocacy role. And actually our American Association of Museums, our big group that represents museums, changed their name a number of years ago to the American Alliance of Museums. They believe so strongly in this advocacy role of what museums should be doing that they changed their name, this national group. And so, as I said, things like social justice issues for underserved groups, like those imprisoned, is one place. The other is environmental justice. A lot of zoos and aquariums are about the environment and global warming and some of the other controversial issues. They've taken a stand to say this is about conservation, and we have to understand the strong messaging about environmental conservation. Absolutely, and that's one of the things that we're starting to really understand is we came from collecting, a place of collection and preservation of objects and things, and what the government or we deemed valuable. We shifted to the role of education to start to understand the public and educate the public. Now we're moving to this place of advocacy, and if we want to be advocates, we have to understand what the complexities are of the different groups that we're advocating for. So that shifts us to being good listeners, as we talked about, and good learners, and understanding that. We can keep our expertise, we can have those values, but we can also listen and grow ourselves. If that's what our expectation is of our visitors, we need to learn to grow and understand things in a new, complex way as well. I think, again, it's giving voice to those who have not had it in the past. Being a public institution, again, getting back to the we, the people. How do you give voice to those who have not been heard before? And also this idea of neutral. Museums move from trying to be neutral places to places of conversation. But the idea of democracy, sharing that voice, sharing that forum, not just being. So this is often a question. We are the experts. The issue is the point and the role of a museum is about education, is about bringing new points of view to bear. But if we don't understand where people are and we can't meet people where they are, then we're just talking into the wind, or we're not going to be able to connect to people if we don't understand the place and space that they are. So it's a bit arrogant to say they don't know, and I've heard that from a number of different museum people. They know their situation, they know where they stand, so we need to meet them at that place and space. I think because we have been somewhat isolationists in terms of our view, that museums have become a place that is a threat. A lot of our native cultures, Native Americans, don't trust the museum because it has not been a place of their heritage. It has been a place that has taken their story and decided how they're going to express it versus letting the native voice be told through their own eyes. So there's not a lot of trust there in terms of certain particular groups. So what we've learned is to work again with this group, create that kind of trust, have a conversation, not say what do you need, but work alongside, shoulder to different groups to start to understand what those needs are. There's a fabulous place in the Jacobs Center in San Diego that they were working with local groups and saying, deciding you need a medical facility in this new space. And after many conversations over a long period of time, the community kept saying, no, we would need cricket fields to play cricket. And they said, no, you need a medical facility. They said, no, we need cricket fields. Finally, they really heard that and understood what they meant. They needed a place to bring their community together around an idea and a value. Playing cricket was a place and space everybody could be together. So they needed that space first. Eventually, did they get to the medical facility? They did. But they needed the cricket field first to come together in a similar space. Again, it really depends. There's a number of different places and spaces. One of the big things that we've talked about is building that trust and working with that community and doing it in an embedded way where you're working with, not for. This has been our mantra. Not deciding what the needs are of this group, but working alongside for a long period of time. And again, to build that trust takes some time. So some of the projects that we've worked on at the university in terms of Spark Fuel Ignite, go in, we work with the homeless communities, we serve meals, we do things like that so that the community trusts what we're doing. We're not just exploiting this particular group, but we're really working with them and care about that community in a deeper way. Potentially, if that is the group that they're hoping to serve, yes, then they need to go and be with that group and understand the value of that group and talk to that group and understand what's happening. Absolutely. And that's one of the big things what we talked about yesterday is to understand, decide what community you're working with, and then decide why. This is a huge, huge question, not just because, well, it will make us feel better, or it will look good on a grant proposal, or for other reasons, but to truly understand that community and why you're serving them, and to get to the level of reciprocity, where you're giving to that community as well as getting something in return. Conversations, listening. We've done things like neighborhood block parties. Usually food is a great, is the great common space and area where you have conversation. When you break bread together, this is a way to really start to have that kind of conversation and have that connection with these particular groups. So that's been one of our most successful ways. And again, really listening and hearing what's being said. And time. Time is a big factor. Yeah.